The midday rush brought a familiar hum to the harborside seafood shack. Trays of fresh catch clattered onto wooden tables, the espresso machine whined steadily behind the counter, and soft indie folk drifted from a weather-worn speaker near the deck. Outside, sailboats glided across the sunlit bay. It was the picture of a sleepy coastal afternoon where nothing out of the ordinary ever occurred. Near the corner booth sat one of the tech world's most prominent young venture capitalists. Having slipped away from an exhausting innovation summit just down the coast, she was enjoying the anonymity. Though her face had graced the cover of every major business tech journal, today she wore a simple oversized linen shirt, dark sunglasses, and traveled entirely without her usual security team. For just half an hour, she wanted a moment where she wasn't negotiating 10-figure acquisitions. If you love stories that inspire millions, subscribe to Korean Nightmare Stories, hit the notification bell, and comment where you're watching from. Across the room sat a man few people would look at twice. His denim shirt was faded at the elbows, his boots were scuffed with dried mud, and his hands bore the calluses of heavy, outdoor labor. Next to him, his 8-year-old son was happily coloring a paper placemat while holding a worn-out plush dog missing one of its ears. The father smiled warmly every time the boy showed him a drawing. To anyone watching, he was just a hard-working landscaper giving his kid a nice lunch. The investor couldn't help but smile. She had built an empire, yet the effortless bond between the two felt far more valuable than anything on a balance sheet. Suddenly, her phone buzzed on the table. A single text appeared via an encrypted messaging app. "They tracked your vehicle. Move now." The smile vanished. Her pulse spiked. Looking toward the large glass windows facing the marina, she saw a silver sedan pull up to the curb, followed immediately by another. 3 men stepped out. Despite the warm coastal breeze, they wore heavy windbreakers and baseball caps pulled low. They didn't look like tourists. Instead, they efficiently separated, each taking up a position around the shack. One headed for the front deck, one moved toward the side service entrance, and the third stayed by the boardwalk, pretending to check his watch while keeping his eyes locked on the exits. She recognized the precision immediately. It was a professional tracking team. For 18 months, a rival conglomerate had been trying to coerce her into selling her shares in a proprietary aerospace software firm she had built from scratch. First came hostile buyout offers, then digital sabotage, and finally, direct threats. Today, they had caught her completely unguarded. The bell above the heavy wooden door chimed. The first man walked in, casually ordering a drink at the counter, but never taking a sip. His eyes systematically scanned the room. The investor lowered her gaze, pretending to look at the menu, her chest tightening. Escape was blocked. Just then, the landscaper walked past her booth to grab a handful of napkins from the station. Without looking up, she whispered, barely audible over the chatter, "They're hunting me." The man didn't flinch. His pace slowed for a fraction of a second. "How many?" he asked quietly. 3 outside. 1 just walked in. Exactly 15 seconds passed. The father knelt down beside his son's chair. "Hey, buddy, remember the hide-and-seek game we practiced for the park?" The boy nodded, his eyes bright. "If you give the signal, I go straight to the back employee door. And I wait there out of sight until you come get me." The father patted his shoulder. "Smart kid." There was no fear in the boy's face. It was clear they had practiced safety drills before. The investor watched, bewildered. This wasn't how an average parent reacted to danger. When the man stood back up, his entire demeanor shifted. The relaxed, tired posture disappeared. His frame straightened, and his eyes began scanning the room with absolute precision, evaluating exits, line-of-sight angles, structural pillars for cover, and improvised tools. He wasn't panicked. He was executing an assessment. Near the counter, the man in the windbreaker began reaching inside his jacket. The father intercepted the movement instantly. Without drawing attention, he stepped up to the manager near the register. "Sir, we have an electrical spark issue in the back kitchen. You need to clear the floor." The manager looked confused, but the absolute, unshakable authority in the man's quiet voice left no room for argument. The manager immediately hit the public address mic. "Folks, we need everyone to calmly step outside onto the main boardwalk due to a maintenance issue." The crowd began to move in an orderly line. Realizing his window was closing, the operative near the counter drew a compact firearm. The father instantly stepped directly into his path, blocking the view of the exiting patrons. "Step aside," the operative growled. "Not going to happen," the father replied calmly. The investor felt a chill. This wasn't reckless bravery. This was deep operational familiarity. As the operative raised the weapon, a few remaining patrons shouted, scrambling for cover. Before the firearm could be leveled, the father slipped a small, matte black tactical credential card from his pocket, flashing it toward the investor for a split second. She caught the distinct government emblem. Her breath caught. The quiet landscaper wasn't a civilian laborer. He was a former Tier 1 operator from a highly classified specialist unit, a man listed as missing in action and presumed dead nearly 5 years ago. The operative didn't even have time to register the interference. The father moved with blinding speed. He sidestepped the line of fire, redirected the operative's arm upward, and delivered a precise strike to the wrist. The weapon discharged harmlessly into the wooden rafters as the remaining patrons fled through the back. With a fluid twist, the father disarmed the man and kicked the weapon under a heavy industrial refrigerator. "Go to the back hallway now," he instructed the investor. Outside, the remaining 2 men heard the discharge and burst through the side doors. One immediately spotted the investor. "Visual contact." The father grabbed a heavy oak dining table, flipping it effortlessly to create a ballistic barrier. "Stay low behind this," he commanded. She looked at him, stunned. "Your file said you didn't survive the embassy extraction." He kept his eyes locked on the doorway. "It was the only way to ensure my son grew up in peace." The second operative opened fire, rounds splintering the wooden booths. The father remained perfectly still behind cover, counting the shots, waiting for the brief window when the shooter would have to cycle a new magazine. The moment the firing paused, he moved. Within a matter of seconds, he utilized the environment to neutralize the second threat and used a heavy brass stanchion to disarm the third before another shot could be fired. Distant sirens began to wail down the coastal highway. The remaining operatives, realizing their local advantage was entirely gone and law enforcement was closing in, ceased resistance. Slowly, silence returned to the shattered diner. The father walked over to the back hallway, where his son was waiting exactly as instructed. The boy ran out and wrapped his arms around his waist. "You found me," the boy smiled. "Always," the father replied gently. The investor approached them, her expression filled with profound gratitude. "My father was an intelligence liaison. He told me about an operator who risked everything to protect a civilian transport. Everyone thought he was gone." The man nodded slightly. "On paper, he is. After my wife passed, I needed to be a father, not a shadow people kept hunting." A week later, the network behind the intimidation campaign was fully dismantled by federal authorities following the evidence gathered at the scene. The investor kept the father's identity entirely out of the press, respecting his privacy, but she left him with a private, unlisted contact number. "If your son ever needs anything, schooling, security, a direct line, it's yours." The man smiled, placed the card in his pocket, and took his son's hand as they walked out toward the harbor parking lot. Looking up at him, the boy asked, "Dad, Were you a secret soldier? He squeezed the boy's hand, smiling warmly. No, pal. Soldiers fight the world's battles. Dads just make sure their kids get home safely. Watching them walk away into the afternoon sun, the investor realized that the most formidable people are rarely the loudest, and the most impactful identities are the ones kept quiet until they are needed most. Sometimes, the greatest identities are the ones never revealed until a life depends on them. If this story moved you, please leave a like, share it with someone who appreciates true courage, and drop a comment below letting us know your favorite moment. Your support helps these powerful stories reach more people around the world. Thank you for watching.